Great. So in Mockun, we got our tasks, well, web server here, right? We get our web server for the tasks endpoints. And what we want to do now for logging, we would go ahead and, for example, create a new environment. So what we do is we just go to File, New Environment. Let's give it a name. We can put it in the tasks folder here, but this time not task API mocks. So let's again create a new folder here and let's call it log-api-mocks. Let's take that folder and inside of the folder create a file called log-api-mocks.json. Let's save it. Great. So let's add a new route. Let's set it to post because we want to post some error messages to this server here. Let's call that endpoint /errors. Now we need to add cars again. So what we want to do is we want to switch to headers and then add course headers, right? So here we get again the access control allow origin set to every route or every other URL. And then we can go ahead and start this server, and we can also start that task API mock server if you haven't done it yet. So for me, in the meantime, I restarted my computer, so I needed to just start it. So start both of them. Now go to the global error handler, which we have right here, right? And create the constructor or call the constructor. And inside of the constructor, what we want to do is we want to call the super method. So the error highlighting will disappear right now. And super is the constructor of the base class. So the base class is the error handler and we extend our global error handler, right? So the base class is error handler and super is like the constructor of the error handler. Well, TypeScript doesn't call the constructor on the base class under the hood, right? So we need to call it manually. Now you might think, okay, why do we need to do that? Well, we need our HTTP client inside here, right? Inside of the constructor. So we need to create the constructor and we weren't able to set it up unless we started using the super method. So it's just like mandatory to use it that way. Now let's get the import HTTP client so that we can really send error information to our web server, right? Always keep in mind what you want to do. Now here, inside of the constructor, not inside of the super method, we want to set a field HTTP client just as we did it inside of our service. Here we got the HTTP client and now we can already start using it. So instead of setting or sending an alert or showing an alert to the user, we want to send well, a request to our web server. So call this HTTP client.post, right? We want to post something and we're going to post it to localhost, and for sure HTTP, right? We don't want to forget that, not again. So HTTP localhost. Now let's find out the port. So what we want to do is we want to go to our mock information and we got that inside of the tasks folder and then log API mocks. Let's go inside here. You can see the port is set to 3002. So for sure every web server which we have here in Mockun, like our log server, has a different port than the task server, and that's very important, right? So we have the same base URL, which is localhost, right? But the port, each application needs a different port, and Mockun sets up like a different environment is like a different application, therefore needs its own port. So this is why we have a different port this time. So HTTP localhost 3002/errors. And what we want to do is we want to for sure add our error message which we have. So add a comma here. Can switch to the next line of code and we want to extend it and add the message from the error object that we have right here. So error and then the message from it. Now afterwards we want to subscribe to it because HTTP client post is observable, and once we got the result we just don't want to do anything right now. Now we need to subscribe to it since HTTP client post is for sure an observable, and well, once we got the result of it we don't want to do anything right now. This is why we just invoke an empty method, so we just do nothing here, right? Great, so save like that. You can see that we get a fail to compile error inside of the app module.ts. Let's see what's going on here. You can see that we cannot use it because we don't have a dependency injection decorator. And therefore, as you have already learned, we go into the error handler here, because this is Angular core, and we simply take the injectable. So injectable. Now we just take that injectable and add it here. So add injectable, add parentheses, and we are good to go. Now the global error handler is ready to get injected, so we can use it in the dependency injection, and the add module is no longer throwing that error. Now inside of our application, you can see we have no error shown anymore. And if I open the console, you can also see that there is no error getting displayed. Now let's switch to Macoun, go to the log API server, click on logs, and you can see a lot of posting here, right? And one of the latest, because that was just because I started the application and pressed F5 and just checked if it worked. And you can see the latest one here is like showing us exactly what happens if we just take a look at the body, failed to load the calendar, right? So this is for sure for all of them, load the calendar, because that's the only error that we have in our application right now. And this is because we hard coded it, right? So now we have a log web server, which just tells us why an application stopped working or which error occurred for a specific user. And that's amazing. So we now have seen that, okay, so a user has now faced 7 errors in total, just failed to load the calendar, right? That's super interesting for our metrics. So if we want to improve our application, like you have a real big business application, for example, then you really want to log that information because you want to see this, and then based on that, well, logs make decisions. So if you see, okay, a lot of people are really having trouble reaching our calendar application, we need to load it up front, or we need to load it in the background, lazy, or whatever, right? So you can make really important business decisions or programmer decisions based on that logging information. However, this for sure is a little bit more important only when you are developing real world applications out there for your company and all of that. But then it's really important. So this is definitely some more advanced knowledge, but if you're working as a programmer and if you are going to write real applications using Angular or web development in general, this is some sort of knowledge that really makes you valuable as a programmer. So definitely stick around and, well, continue learning on that part. However, the line here, failed to load the calendar, is, well, just a simple error message, right? And by reading it, it's hard to figure out which line of code has caused the error and why. So as a programmer, you are for sure more interested in like, okay, which line of code and which coding file, so TypeScript file, for example, was responsible for that. So because failed to load the calendar, you just could go ahead and copy that error message and then search for that, right? And maybe find the correct position. But if we would see, okay, this error or exception occurred right here in blah 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 calendar component.ts line 15, it would be absolutely more valuable. So let's extend that.